Put your hand on your head, right here. No, right here. No, really, I mean, everybody. Put your hand on your head. I can't go forward until everyone's got their hand on their head right there. Now, not this part right here, but inside. That's called your prefrontal cortex. Right inside of here, the actual brain part. That's your you have your hand on your head. You got to put your hand on your head. Now, why do you need to know about your prefrontal cortex? That should be a question. Why are we doing this? Well, because you don't want your 30-year-old self angry at your 14-year-old self. Let me say it one more time. You need to know about your prefrontal cortex because you don't want your 30-year-old self angry at your 14-year-old self. Now tonight, every time I utter the word you, what I'm really referring to is this. Right here. I'm referring to what's inside, right on that frontal part. So when I say you have to think that thing right here. Now here's a thought experiment for you to help wrap your head around this. That was a little fun. Have you ever thought about a pile of sand? Now, when I said, have you ever thought, what I really meant was, has your prefrontal cortex ever had executive control of the concept of a pile of sand? How fun is that? Now, back to the sand piles. Imagine, if you will, you have a pile of sand right here. And I take a grain of it and I put it over here. Would anybody actually argue that I now have two piles of sand? Yeah. What if I took another grain, and another, and another? Eventually, we could agree that I have two piles of sand, albeit smaller than the original, but two piles nonetheless. Let's continue our thoughts. There's this magical grain of sand, this last one. I don't have a pile, but if I add just one more grain, now I've got a pile over here, I've got two piles. Does it seem like we could agree on what this last magical grain of sand, which one was it? I don't know that we could agree. It seems like it just happens in there somewhere. Well, what if for some unknown set of reasons, some of your hairs fell out? Maybe all of them fell out. Am I still me? I still think I'm me. My students from 9 years ago still recognize me as Mr. Orlesky. What if a finger or a hand left you? Would you still be you? What if something larger? Do we not recognize it anymore? How do we still recognize it? It seems like none of these things, your hair, your arm, your hand, are actually you. This, your prefrontal cortex, to a large part, makes up who you are. Now with that thought in mind, that's kind of like the pile of sand idea. That the individual grains of sand make up the pile, but unlike the idea that no one grain of sand makes up the pile, this single part seems to really indicate you. Now here's the interesting or the scary part about the prefrontal cortex. Right now, you are undergoing a tremendous amount of growth in it. This is its time to grow. Now typically a growth spurt means mom or dad complaining that Sam's growing out of his shoes before he's worn them out, or Susan's pants are too short only a month after mom and dad bought them. Now these are physical manifestations of this growth, of a growth spurt. But what does it mean to say that your brain is undergoing a growth spurt? Simply, this is what it means. You that are sitting here right now, that prefrontal cortex, who you think you are, you're not going to survive the process. Now, I don't mean that you're going to die. Rather, I mean you'll be transformed. You'll be changed. You'll become something different. Moms and dads, your babies from some 14 years ago, they're no longer in existence. Those little infants, these things, they were only that big. They're gone. They transformed into the young men and women sitting right here. A member of the class of 2017, but it's love, discipline, joy, all that food you gave them, that has brought this. That's gone. We now have this. Your brain is going to be the same. Nearly unrecognizable in the future from what it is today. Now, what actually occurs during this prefrontal growth is profound. It's a little counterintuitive, and it's even oxymoronic. Now, I love that word oxymoronic, so I have to have a little aside. You guys know that word. Mom and dad say they're stuck in rush hour traffic. Who's rushing where? Rush hour traffic. And then you get this. You know these chocolate bars? They're called fun size. What's so fun about that? This is a fun size. Now, on this here fun-sized chocolate bar, I'm going to eat it, but not right now. I'm going to delay my gratification in eating this. Hint. That's on the test later. Gratification, delayed gratification. Anyway, back to some of the profound changes that are occurring in the prefrontal cortex. When we think of the word growth, we typically think of an increase, but that's only part of the process that you are beginning. It also includes massive cutting, massive eliminating. Creative destruction is going on inside your heads right now. It's called neural pruning. A great number of the connections you have inside your head between neurons are going to be cut. They're going to be pruned. And to a great extent, the cutting and pruning that goes on for the next few years determines who you are the rest of your life. So think about it. Right now, you're sitting there. You're thinking. And Descartes would say, since you're thinking, you exist. And he was right. You may think, but I'm me. I can look down at myself, I can see me. Go ahead, look at your hand. You're you. You think, I'm me. What do you mean I'm going to be different? You can think about your memories. Some of them are funny, some are sad. You can think about your knowledge. You can think about certain things that you know. But you have barely begun to build the final you. What's wonderful is that right now, you can greatly influence the finished product. Perhaps for the first time in your life, you have the necessary intellect, and moreover, you have free will to actually change who you are going to become. It will require hard work, but you don't want to cheat your future self, so do the hard work. You don't want your 30-year-old self to be mad at the decisions of the 14-year-old. Have a conversation with your parents later tonight. On your way home, have a conversation. Maybe stop at the when you guys stop at the ice cream place on your way home, you are taking them to ice cream, right? Right? So, ask your parents, in retrospect, if they could magically go back, would they have studied less? Would they have done less athletics? Would they have studied poetry less? It's doubtful that they would answer less to any of those things. I think they would say more to all of those. So what is neural pruning? Simply put, brain eliminates those things that aren't used. And additionally, it strengthens those connections that it does use. Seems obvious. You practice basketball diligently, you get better at basketball. You practice it not so diligently, you don't get better at it. You can't just show up to the court. What you do lots of with diligence, you get better at it. What you don't get better at it. But it's even worse when you think about neural pruning. Because neural pruning includes this profound idea. It includes the idea that the very capacity to do things in the future, if you don't practice now, diminishes. So no matter how much you practice in the future, if you don't practice now, you just can't do it anymore. The ability to do it goes away. So what's going to prevent you from angering your future self? The simple answer is lots of appropriate study, extracurriculars, athleticism, all of those things. But how does one facilitate the achievement in scholastics, extracurriculars, and athletics? There's at least 4 things: immersing oneself in a challenging environment, delayed gratification, avoiding negative peer pressure, and judiciously relying on authority. Stay with me on this. 4 of them. First, immerse yourself in a challenging environment. You're at Chandler Prep. This has to be an environment where there's a cornucopia of subjects which are examined, which will tend to challenge large regions of your prefrontal cortex to strengthen the neural connections rather than prune them. The liberal arts work for a reason. This is one of them. Broad-based challenges to your brain. Second, delayed gratification. I think you'll enjoy this. At Stanford University, 1960, a researcher named Walter Mischel began a series of long-term studies at the Bing Nursery School. So he goes in there, he gets children that are 4 to 6 years old. Those are his subjects. And these are commonly referred to as the Stanford Marshmallow Test. Here's how they work. The researcher leads one of these 4 to 6-year-olds into a barren room. There's just a table and a chair. The child is seated. The child is offered a treat. Marshmallow, pretzel, cookie, hence the name Marshmallow Test. And the treat's placed on the table. The child is told, if you don't eat the treat before I come back, this is the researcher talking, I'll give you 2 of them. But if you eat it, it's the only one you get. Now, a few of the children immediately just grabbed the thing and ate it. The vast majority attempted to not eat it. They attempted delayed gratification. The ones who attempted it would cover their eyes or their hands. They would turn around so they couldn't see the treat. Just, okay, I won't look at it. Others tried to distract themselves physically by acting out. You know, little thing on the table, bang things, pulling their ponytails, jump up and down in the chair, just anything not to think about the treat. Of all those that tried that, about 1/3 were successful in not eating the treat. And here's what's amazing. 10 years later, those that showed delayed gratification during the experiment were more likely to be described by their parents as confident adolescents. 2 years later, but 12 years after that, after the initial test, those who delayed gratification correlated with higher SAT scores. A 2006 paper replicated the original results, and this is wonderful, a 2011 brain imaging study. Let's put what were once 4 and 6-year-olds into a brain imaging device, an MRI, and let's take a look at their brains. And they had distinctly different brain structures, all because of what they did in delaying their gratification, and it changed their prefrontal cortex as they grew. Now, further measures such as educational attainment, body mass index, whether they're in shape or not, all of these things were part of that. Now, 2 other studies. I won't go into all the details. In 1950, Dalton Ash conducted and published a series of experiments on peer pressure. He quantified peer pressure. You guys know what that is. You talk to all the time about it. Hang out with the wrong crowd. Someone that says, let's not do homework rather than let's do homework. The wrong peer pressure. The other one, Stanley Milgram, had to do with authority figures. Listening to the wrong people. Allowing someone else to tell you what you should do, who maybe isn't giving you the best advice. Now, I exhort you, go home, look up these 2, Ash and Milgram. Discuss the 2 experiments this summer. Talk to your parents about it. See how these 2 experiments illuminate some of the foibles of being human, of the things you'll face, of the things that will stop your prefrontal cortex from being fully developed, of you becoming that person that the 30-year-old you won't be mad at. You have to make decisions that will not allow cut to occur. Your 30-year-old self is depending on you to make the correct decisions. I'm done. I can have my chocolate bar.